All right, I'm joined by DC Mayor Muriel Bowser, running for your third term as DC's mayor. And first, I want to just jump into the topics with you. And crime in DC, I've seen you in many press conferences, obviously, talking about some of the tragedies we've seen in the city. And I know you said that there's still work to be done. So I want to talk to you about what your plans are to continue to address crime in DC, and what plans do you have that you may not have introduced yet?
Well, thanks for that question. And certainly, we know public safety is top of mind for DC residents, and it's certainly top of mind for me. It's the thing I think about first in the morning and last when I go to bed at night. And we know what we've seen nationally as it relates to gun crime and violent crime. Just yesterday, I was on the Hill with Speaker Pelosi and others talking about what we need to do as a nation to have sensible gun reforms that will keep our community safe. Part of what we are focused on in the district is a framework that identifies people who have used guns and are likely to use guns, and make sure that they have the appropriate attention from all our human services agencies, but also our law enforcement agencies. We believe that addressing a small group of people that are using guns in our city will help drive down crime. But DC residents have also told me that they appreciate that I'm the only candidate speaking out, especially among the council members who are running for mayor, who's willing to make the tough calls on public safety and has a comprehensive plan that includes making sure we have enough police officers to serve our needs.
All right. And with the DC Police Department, you talked about your call for more officers. Any other plans for the DC Police Department as we try to combat this spike in crime?
Chief Conti is very focused, of course, on hiring the best and the best, starting with DC residents. That's why we restarted the MPD Cadet Academy. He's made a pledge to have our force be 30% female by 2030. We're already ahead of the national average, but hiring women, we know, is good for our department. The last thing I want to mention is his partnership with the Violent Crime Reduction Unit and the Homicide Reduction Unit that partners MPD with our federal partners at the FBI and ATF and DEA. And recently, we were together at 7th and O Streets Northwest, where the United States Attorney with the FBI joined me to talk about their year-long investigation that resulted in 22 arrests. These were high-level people involved in drug and gun distribution. Is that type of detailed detective work that will not only help make the 7th and O community safer, but all the way up to Columbia Heights and all the way over to Truxton Circle. Neighborhoods were implicated in this very, very big investigation. So that type of work, it's hard work. It requires good people. That's why we need our force strength at levels that support not only patrol, but detective work.
And some of your challengers, question whether more police officers should be part of the solution. I mean, what is your response to that?
Well, I know if the police chief tells me in the last 2 years where those council members defunded the police for 2 straight years, we were unable to hire anybody. We saw our force strength go down 200 officers. If they'd have their way, they would let it go down under 3,000, which is what their police commission report suggested. That's not acceptable. We cannot have our response times tick up 90 seconds every year, because if you had to call 911, I'm sure you would want to know that a police officer could respond in a reasonable amount of time to render aid. And so that as your mayor, that's my job, is to look at the resources available and tell the council what we need and make sure we implement those resources effectively. What I've had to do and what the chief has had to do is use overtime to make sure we have the officers that we need. And that is not a sustainable solution.
All right, let's turn to traffic safety. We heard the tragic story of the 9-year-old who was fighting for his life over several months recently. And the other day he passed away. And we've just seen these cases, a lot of these cases. I know you've introduced some plans like Vision Zero to try to combat this, but yet we're still seeing these traffic fatalities in the district. In your third term, if you're reelected, what are your plans to, I guess, move forward with what you've already done?
We lost a child. We've lost too many children, too many people on our streets because of aggressive driving, people speeding, and people not following the law. Our child, a 9-year-old, was leaving his school, crossing a street, and he died. I was on the scene that day and that afternoon, and was even more committed that afternoon to making sure we're doing everything that we can to stop speeding and aggressive and distracted drivers. We also heard, a speeding driver hit a group of girls in Fairfax, Virginia. So we know that we are seeing across the country increases in traffic fatalities. If there was a bright spot during COVID, is that we got a lot of construction done and a lot of planned traffic improvements, busways, bicycle facilities delivered across the District of Columbia in all 8 wards. The council just approved my budget proposal that includes $200 million that will allow us over the 6-year capitals improvement plan to address all of our dangerous intersections and corridors. And that is going to be just powerful work. I was reminded recently on Bike to Work Day, which I've participated in for many years, over 20 years. We were able to ride on a portion of the Metropolitan Branch Trail, starting at Fort Totten, where it's paved. We went all the way through Mid-City, came across K Street to the newly renovated Franklin Park. And so all of those things, I promised in my inaugural address in 2015 that we would complete the Metropolitan Branch Trail. And so I was so proud to be on a pretty significant portion that goes through Fort Totten and connects to the Mid-City.
And you've seen the speed cameras under your administration. The city's expanded the speed camera program. Talk a bit about how that program's working. Obviously, some people it's a controversial plan because some people claim they're predatory, but then others say they help stop traffic crashes and that sort of thing. So where do you stand with speed cameras, and if moving forward, how do you want to see that program evolve?
Speed cameras are put in place to save lives, and no one can dispute, it's not controversial, that people survive traffic collisions at lower levels of speed. The more speed, the more likelihood of fatality. So we know that reducing speeds in our city saves lives. And so that's what our camera program is for, to identify dangerous corridors and intersections where people aren't following the law, and enforce it consistently.
All right, emerging from the pandemic, what are your continuing plans here? Obviously, you were the mayor that took us through the pandemic. Now, talk a bit about what your plans are as we try to economically recover from this.
Well, I think that this is what this election is about. Who's going to lead us through the pandemic, and who do you trust to do it? DC residents tell me every single day that they are grateful for my leadership. They're pleased that we had strong and steady leadership throughout the pandemic, that we got testing up, had free tests at fire stations and libraries, that people had access to vaccine, and we got our schools open safely before anybody else in the region. So they know that it's that type of steady, tested leadership that is important as we come back. So we do have to be concerned that we are investing in a robust and fair recovery, that the people who suffered the most in hospitality workers, restaurants, hotels are top of mind during our comeback. Also, that we are regaining where we left off before the pandemic and getting people jobs. We recorded the lowest levels of unemployment since those numbers have been recorded in Ward 7 and 8 prior to the start of the pandemic. So our focus has been on training DC residents for high demand jobs that pay well, that will allow folks to buy homes and raise their families right here in the District of Columbia, like our infrastructure jobs. We will have the opportunity during our comeback to deploy $3 billion in infrastructure money from the federal government. We've started planning. We have a task force led by former Secretary of Transportation Rodney Slater. And we are now collecting ideas about how to deploy it. But central to that is employing DC residents. Let me finally say about how we focus on our downtown and commercial corridors, bringing employees back. And we've had intense conversations with the federal government about our federal workers, but also looking to change some buildings in the downtown or on major corridors like Wisconsin Avenue and Friendship Heights, so that those buildings that may no longer be useful for office workers could become housing or some other mixed use. And we're also focused on making sure people are enjoying our city with festivals and parades and coming to the city for conventions. And the government itself is going to be a more active partner in bringing people to our corridors.
And you just touched on affordable housing, your plans for that. And, talk a bit about some of the other strategies you have that you may not have been able to utilize yet that you would do with your third term in getting more affordable housing in the district.
Well, I'm proud of our work. I dare say it would be hard to find a more robust investment in affordable housing in any city in America, and maybe even any state in America. We have committed $1 billion in the last 7 years, and the council just approved my biggest proposal to date of 400. Well, I proposed 500. They approved almost all of it, so that we can build more units. I'm also proud that unlike any other jurisdiction, we have neighborhood by neighborhood planning goals. So we've looked very closely at the district and know how many units that we can invest in to provide more affordable housing. Today, we celebrated our Black Homeowners Fund. And I am paneled a strike force of industry experts, government experts, and community folks to identify some strategies that address generational, systemic, discriminatory practices in housing that occurred here in the district, some federal, some local, that kept Black Washingtonians from being able to buy homes or use all the tools that were available to their neighbors. So this is one effort that we are looking forward to deploying and setting a goal for increasing Black home ownership in our city.
All right, let's talk about infrastructure. We have the president's infrastructure law that's going to bring a lot of money into the nation's capital. You've already announced, I know, some of the things you plan to do, but what's on your list of priorities for that money?
Union Station is probably our biggest single priority, and we are very focused on that transformation, working with Amtrak, working with USDOT, working with the private development partner as well, to bring it back to life in some ways. We have a beautiful historic building, but we can expand the capacity so Amtrak can add services and all the regional providers can have better use of their space as well. So that's a big priority. Replacing lead pipes. DC Water is going to use some of that investment, and they have set the goal to replace all lead service pipes by 2030. And so that's a very exciting thing to be able to say. But a focus of those dollars is also addressing historic infrastructure that separated communities. So I am hopeful that the task force that we impaneled will also come back with some ideas about connecting communities that have been separated by highways. And we have some good candidates that are around 295. And I recently met with a group boaters along the Anacostia that I'm asking them to develop an idea because they too have been affected by the highway. And I think that some infrastructure investments in that historic asset in the district would go a long way.
All right. And let's talk a bit about the relationship between the mayor's office and the city council. At times it's been described as contentious, but how would you describe that relationship? And is there anything you would like to change when it comes to your office working with city council, especially over big issues?
Well, the city council just approved my $19.5 billion budget. So I say we work pretty well on the on the priorities of our administration and their priorities in delivering them for the District of Columbia. Listen, in DC, there are 14 people that basically decide what the city's priorities are, fund those priorities, and implement those priorities. And so my job as mayor is to help the council members on the things that are important to them, that they fund it, and that will help the most people in the District of Columbia. And so I work hard every day to do exactly that.
Finally, I want to give you the floor to talk a bit about what separates you from your challengers.
Well, I am, let me just say, and I hope that you've seen in our campaign that we can talk about my record. I have a long record of working on the big issues that DC residents sent me to, and I've done the things that I promised that I would do. I promised that I would focus on affordable housing, and I did. Over $1 billion already invested. I promised that I would close DC General and make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring, and we work on that every single day. We've effectively ended family homelessness in the District of Columbia. It's been reduced by 78%. We also built short-term family housing in every ward that didn't have it. 7 wards, 7 projects, dignified short-term family housing. So we're proud of that as well. I have also stood very strong on our school investments, and I believe strongly, and my opponents don't, that we should stick with the course that's gotten us improvement over the last 15 years. So I'm very strong on making sure that as your mayor, I'm accountable for oversight of our public schools with the council's oversight. And so I would not turn back the clock on our school governance model. And more than that, I will keep my promises, as I have done in middle schools. We have 3,000 more middle schoolers than we did when we started. We built Banneker Academic High School, and we're going to keep that going by focusing on our high school redesigns across the city. But finally, I have been willing to make tough calls, and I am a straight talker. So I won't tell you one thing and go in a private room and say, I have a shifting opinion or view about a proposal when I go in another room. And that's why DC residents know I'll make the tough calls, whether it's on saying that we need more police because we need more police, or focusing on a strategy in a city like ours where there is housing and there is shelter, and offering it to our residents who are unhoused and living in tents. That we have to do that. And we have to make sure that tent encampments are a thing of the past in our city. So that separates me. I have a real record. I've delivered in all 8 wards, and I have and I talk straight. I'm not going to have a shifting view, a flip flop on important issues. You can trust what I say. And I have the skills and expertise to lead the district's comeback. And for us, that's what this is all about.
And one other question, I posed this to the other candidates, and I know you've spoken on this, but want to get you on the record here. Where do you stand with bringing the commanders to DC? Because there's a lot of talk about how much the city should put forward for this to bring the team into the city. So where do you stand on that?
Everybody knows where I stand on it. I've said the same thing for 7 years. There's 2 questions here. What do we do with our land at RFK? And our pitch to the federal government has been the district needs to control it. We shouldn't have a falling down stadium surrounded by asphalt when our city needs housing and jobs. So we have to get control of our land. I support, like I have supported at Audi Field, if you would remember, that the district acquired the land and prepared it for development. And the team, DC United, built its own stadium. And I think the same model would work for our football team.
Mayor Bowser, thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon to speak to us.
Thank you. Have a great one.
All the best. Take care.
Bye-bye.